It had been a long day, and I was tired. My legs ached from standing at the kitchen counter, preparing dinner for my son, who barely looked up from his phone anymore. At 58, I felt every year weighing on my shoulders like stones in a backpack. 3 failed marketing companies behind me, each one a dream that crashed and burned. The scars from those failures still hurt. My son walked into the kitchen, his eyes cold and distant. We hadn't talked much since his last visit home, but tonight felt different. Heavier. I could sense his judgment hanging in the air, like smoke. "Mom, you need to face reality," he said, leaning against the counter. His voice was sharp, cutting. "You're too old to start again. It's over for you." The words hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the edge of the sink, my knuckles white. This wasn't some stranger telling me I was finished. This was my son. The boy I had raised, sacrificed everything for. The one person I thought would always believe in me. I stood there, trying to hold back tears, fighting the urge to collapse right there on the kitchen floor. Little did he know, I was already planning my comeback. I walked to my bedroom that night, his words echoing in my head like a broken record. "Too old to start again. It's over for you." Each word felt like a nail in my coffin, sealing away any hope I might have had left. I had always been there for him. When he failed his first year of college, I worked extra shifts to pay for his second chance. When his girlfriend broke up with him, I listened to him cry for hours. When he needed money for his apartment, I gave him my savings without question. Every sacrifice I made, every dream I put on hold, every late night I spent worrying about his future instead of my own. And this was what I got in return. Complete dismissal. Total rejection. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at my reflection in the dresser mirror. The woman looking back at me seemed older than 58. Tired. Defeated. Used up. But deep in my chest, something burned. A small flame of anger that refused to die. I wouldn't let this be the end of my story. I couldn't. I was about to make a decision that would change everything, and it all started tonight. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard his voice again. "It's over for you." The cruel certainty in his tone made my stomach twist with rage and humiliation. At 2 a.m., I got out of bed and walked to my home office. I pulled out old notebooks filled with business ideas, contact lists, and half-finished plans. My hands shook as I flipped through pages of dreams I had abandoned. But this time felt different. This wasn't about proving something to the world anymore. This was about proving something to him. To the son who saw me as nothing but a washed-up failure. I opened my laptop and started researching. Market trends. Investment opportunities. Business strategies. The anger in my chest grew stronger with each page I read. Each possibility I discovered. This time, I wouldn't rely on anyone else's approval or support. I would build something on my own. Something that would make my son regret ever doubting me. I reached for my phone to make my first call, my heart pounding with nervous excitement. But just as I dialed, I heard a familiar voice that stopped me dead in my tracks. "Mom? What are you doing up so late?" My son's voice came from the hallway. I quickly closed my laptop and shoved my notebooks into the desk drawer. "Just couldn't sleep," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "You know how it is." He appeared in the doorway, his hair messy from sleep. For a moment, he almost looked like the little boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. But then his expression hardened again. "You should get some rest. Tomorrow I'm driving you to look at those senior living communities. It's time you started thinking practically about your future." Senior living communities. He wanted to put me away like some broken piece of furniture. The flame in my chest roared into a fire. "We'll see," I said quietly. He shrugged and walked back to his room. I waited until I heard his door close, then opened my laptop again. My fingers trembled as I typed the first email to an old business contact. I didn't tell anyone what I was doing. After all, who would believe in me now? But I started reaching out anyway, one careful message at a time. Then one of my old contacts made an offer I couldn't refuse, but it came with strings attached. The email response came 3 days later. Harold Winters, a marketing director I had worked with 5 years ago, remembered me. Not only did he remember me, but he had a proposition. Irene, I've been following the digital marketing space, and there's a gap in the market for mature consumer targeting. Your age could actually be an advantage. I have a client looking for exactly this expertise. My heart raced as I read his message. This was the break I needed. But then I read the conditions. There's just one thing. My client wants to remain anonymous for now, and they need complete discretion. No family, no friends can know about this project.
Can you handle that?
Complete secrecy. I looked toward my son's room, remembering his dismissive words. Could I keep this hidden from him while I built something real? I typed back, yes, I can handle it. Harold's next email contained a contract and a modest starting fee. Nothing huge, but enough to begin. I printed everything and hid it in my bedroom closet, behind old photo albums he would never look through. Just as things seemed to be gaining momentum, I hit a roadblock that nearly destroyed everything. Then, out of nowhere, someone from my past showed up and made an unexpected proposal. The betrayal came from someone I trusted completely. My old business partner, Jack Morrison, had promised to invest in my new venture. We had worked together on 2 of my previous companies, and despite the failures, he said he believed in me. I'm sorry, Irene, he said over the phone, his voice distant and cold. I've reconsidered. The market is too uncertain right now. But I knew the real reason. His wife had talked to my son at the grocery store. My son had told her I was having some kind of breakdown, chasing impossible dreams at my age. She convinced Jack I was unstable. I hung up the phone, feeling that familiar sting of betrayal. It was like my failed companies all over again. People losing faith, walking away, leaving me alone with my dreams. For a moment, I considered giving up. Maybe my son was right. Maybe I was too old, too broken, too foolish to try again. Then my doorbell rang. Standing on my porch was Angela Fletcher, a woman I hadn't seen in over 10 years. She had been a client during my first company, before everything fell apart. I heard you might be starting something new, she said with a smile. I'd like to make you an offer. Angela walked into my living room like she owned the place. She was older now, her hair silver instead of blonde, but her confidence hadn't changed. She had always been successful, the kind of woman who made things happen. I've been watching the market, she said, settling into my old armchair. There's a massive opportunity in targeting consumers over 50. Companies are ignoring this demographic, but we have money, and we spend it. She opened her briefcase and pulled out a folder thick with market research. I want to invest in your new company. Not a loan. A real partnership. My hands shook as I looked through her data. She was right. The numbers were incredible. Companies were missing out on billions by ignoring older consumers. How much are you thinking? I asked, hardly daring to hope. $50,000 to start. More if we show results. $50,000. It was more money than I had seen in years. But there was something in her eyes, a calculating look that made me nervous. What do you want in return? 60% ownership, she said simply. You do the work, I provide the capital and connections. I secured a small investment, but just as everything was falling into place, I received a phone call that would test my resolve. The phone rang at midnight. I recognized the number immediately. My son. Mom, I heard something interesting today. His voice was sharp, suspicious. Angela Fletcher is asking questions about you at the coffee shop. What's going on? My heart hammered in my chest. I had been so careful to keep everything secret, but somehow word was getting out. I don't know what you mean, I said, trying to sound sleepy and confused. Don't lie to me. Are you getting involved in some kind of business deal? Because if you are, you need to stop right now. These people are going to take advantage of you. The irony was crushing. He was warning me about people taking advantage of me while he planned to put me in a nursing home. You should just retire, he continued, his voice getting more condescending. You're embarrassing yourself. People are talking. His words stung, but this time they did something different. Instead of breaking me down, they made me stronger, more determined. I'll talk to you tomorrow, I said and hung up. But I couldn't sleep. The pressure was mounting from all sides. I was running out of money, and the clock was ticking. Then I got an email from a major investor who wanted in, but with a catch that could jeopardize everything. The email came from Nathaniel Cross, a venture capitalist I had only heard about in business magazines. Successful, ruthless, and worth hundreds of millions. Someone like him didn't usually notice people like me. Ms. Turner, I've been made aware of your consumer demographic project through mutual connections. I'd like to discuss a substantial investment. Are you available for a meeting tomorrow? I read the message 5 times, convinced it was some kind of mistake. But his signature was real, his contact information checked out. This was actually happening. The meeting was at his downtown office, in a building so tall I got dizzy looking up at it. His assistant led me to a conference room with windows overlooking the entire city. Nathaniel was younger than I expected, maybe 45, with perfectly styled hair and a suit that probably cost more than my car. He looked at me like he was calculating my worth in his head. I'll invest $2 million, he said without any small talk. But I want to own the company completely. You can stay on as a consultant. $2 million. It was more money than I had ever dreamed of. But giving up ownership meant giving up control of my future. Just as I celebrated this breakthrough, something unexpected happened that made me question everything. I need to think about it, I told Nathaniel, standing up from the conference table. His expression shifted from confident to annoyed. Think about it? Ms. Turner, this is a generous offer. At your age, with your track record, you're not going to get better terms anywhere else. There it was again. My age. My failures. Everyone saw them as permanent marks against me. I understand your position, I said carefully. But I need time to consider. I left his office and called my son from the parking garage, hoping that maybe this time he would be proud of me. Maybe this would finally show him I wasn't finished. A $2 million investment. He laughed, actually laughed. Mom, these people are scamming you. Nobody invests that kind of money in failed entrepreneurs. You're being naive. It's just a lucky break, Mom, he continued. Don't get too excited. These things always fall through for you. His dismissal felt like a slap across the face. But it also fueled something deeper. A determination I hadn't felt in years. When I hung up, I had a text message waiting that made me rethink my next move completely. The text was from Harold Winters. Emergency meeting tomorrow. Big news about the anonymous client. This changes everything. I barely slept that night. When I arrived at Harold's office the next morning, he was pacing behind his desk, more excited than I had ever seen him. The client revealed themselves yesterday, he said, hardly containing his enthusiasm. It's Pinnacle Brands. They own 12 major consumer companies, and they want to launch a whole division focused on mature markets. Pinnacle Brands. I had seen their commercials my entire life. They were huge. They've been watching our test campaign results, Harold continued. The response rates are off the charts. They want to offer you a consulting contract worth $500,000. $500,000. My hands started shaking. This was real success, not just lucky breaks or empty promises. The months that followed were a whirlwind of meetings, campaigns, and growing success. But I kept everything secret from my son. Every victory, every milestone, I celebrated alone. My company grew from 1 client to 5, then 10. My investments started paying off in ways I never imagined. Just as I was beginning to believe I was untouchable, I learned a shocking secret about one of my closest allies. The discovery came by accident. I was in Harold's office late one evening when his phone rang. He stepped out to take the call, leaving his computer screen open. I glanced over and saw an email chain about me. Harold was talking to several other business contacts, and the conversation made my blood run cold. Irene Turner is the perfect front for this operation. She's desperate enough to work for cheap, and her age makes clients trust her authenticity. We can use her as long as she's useful. I quickly looked away, my heart pounding. Harold returned to the office, completely unaware of what I had seen. Everything okay? He asked. Perfect, I said, forcing a smile. But inside, I was furious. Even my supporters saw me as a tool to be used. A desperate old woman who could be manipulated. As my success grew over the following weeks, so did the criticism from others. People who had once ignored me now called me lucky, claiming my success was just good timing. She's just in the right place at the right time, they whispered at networking events. I knew better. I had worked for every opportunity, every connection, every dollar. And yet, I was about to face a challenge from a rival that would test everything I had worked for. The challenge came from someone I never expected, my own industry. A younger marketing firm called TrendForce had been watching my success with growing anger. Their CEO, a 32-year-old named Brian Walsh, started spreading rumors that I was stealing clients through underhanded tactics. He told potential customers that my company was unreliable, that I was too old to understand modern marketing. Several of my newer clients started asking uncomfortable questions. One even canceled their contract, saying they needed someone more contemporary. I felt the old familiar panic rising in my chest. Was this how it would end? Not with failure, but with sabotage? Then, on a Friday afternoon, my phone rang. The caller ID showed a number I didn't recognize. Ms. Turner? This is Caroline Mitchell from Global Media Holdings. We've been watching your work with great interest. Global Media Holdings own television stations, magazines, and websites across the country. They were massive. We'd like to offer you an exclusive partnership deal. Our research shows that mature consumers trust older marketing professionals more than younger ones. We want to make you the face of our new demographic division. It was a Saturday morning when my lawyer called with the final numbers. The partnership deal was worth more than I had ever imagined. But just as I was about to celebrate, I received a message that changed everything. The message was from my son. Mom, we need to talk. Today. He arrived at my house an hour later, looking different somehow. Less confident, more uncertain. He sat across from me in the living room, the same room where he had dismissed me months ago. I heard some things, he said quietly. People are talking about a marketing company, about some woman named Irene Turner who's making waves in the industry. My heart started racing. Had he figured it out? How did you do it, Mom? He asked, his voice barely above a whisper. I mean, if it's really you, how did you build something like this without anyone knowing? I could see the struggle in his face. Part pride, part disbelief, part something that looked like shame. I did what you said was impossible. I replied calmly. I started over. He leaned forward, his hands clasped together. The numbers I'm hearing, they can't be right. People are saying you're worth millions now. I nodded slowly. They're right. The color drained from his face as the reality hit him. His mother, the failure he wanted to put in a nursing home, had built an empire while he wasn't paying attention. Before I could say anything else, he made a confession that would turn everything upside down. I sabotaged your first 3 companies, he said, his voice breaking. Not directly, but I told people you were unstable. I convinced investors to pull out. I thought I was protecting you from bigger failures. The words hit me like a physical blow. I gripped the arm of my chair, struggling to breathe. You what? I whispered. I was young and stupid, he continued, tears streaming down his face. I thought you were chasing impossible dreams. I thought if I made the failures happen quickly, you'd give up and find something safer. 20 years of wondering what went wrong. 20 years of blaming myself for every mistake, every missed opportunity.
And it was him.
My own son. The restaurant investor who pulled out at the last minute? I told him you had gambling debts. The marketing client who canceled their contract? I said you were drinking. I ruined everything because I thought I knew better. I sat there in stunned silence, trying to process this betrayal. It was worse than anything he had said to me recently. This was years of systematic destruction of my dreams. Mom, please say something, he begged. I looked at him, this man I had raised, who had been sabotaging me while I blamed myself for every failure. But what I hadn't prepared for was what I would do with this confession that changed everything. The apology came a week later, but it felt too little, too late. My son showed up at my door with flowers and a card, looking like a lost child. I've been seeing a therapist, he said, standing on my porch. Trying to understand why I did those things to you. She says I was threatened by your ambition, afraid you'd succeed without needing me. I let him into the house, but kept my distance. The flowers sat on the kitchen counter, untouched. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, he continued, but I want to try to make things right. I want to help your company succeed. Help my company. After spending years destroying my dreams, now he wanted to be part of my success. I don't need your help, I said quietly. He winced like I had slapped him. I know you don't need it, but I want to earn back your trust somehow. I could see the guilt eating at him, but I wasn't ready to make this easy. He had hurt me in ways that went deeper than failed businesses. He had made me doubt myself for years. We'll see, I said. Just as I was considering whether I could ever trust him again, an unexpected event forced me to make a decision I wasn't prepared for. The crisis came without warning. Brian Walsh from TrendForce had filed a lawsuit against my company, claiming I had stolen his client list and proprietary marketing strategies. It was completely false, but defending against it would cost thousands in legal fees and could destroy my reputation. I sat in my lawyer's office, staring at the lawsuit papers. Everything I had built was suddenly at risk because of one jealous competitor's lies. This could drag on for months, my lawyer warned. Even if we win, the legal costs could bankrupt your company. I felt that familiar despair creeping in. Was this how it would end? Not through my own mistakes, but through someone else's jealousy and lies? That evening, my phone rang. My son's number appeared on the screen. Mom, I heard about the lawsuit. I know you probably don't want my help, but I have information about Walsh that could end this. I hesitated. After everything he had done to me, could I trust him now? What kind of information? He tried to hire me last month to dig up dirt on you. I recorded the conversation where he admitted he was planning to file false claims. I've been carrying this guilt around, not knowing what to do with it. A lifeline from the person who had hurt me most. Life's irony was overwhelming. 6 months later, the lawsuit was dismissed and Brian Walsh's company was under investigation for fraudulent business practices. My recorded evidence had not only saved my company, but destroyed my biggest competitor. My business reached a new milestone that month. The partnership with Global Media Holdings had grown into something extraordinary. We weren't just targeting mature consumers anymore. We were revolutionizing how companies thought about age and marketing. The day the announcement was made, my company was valued at $50 million. $50 million. I stared at the number on my computer screen, hardly able to believe it was real. The media started taking notice. Headlines about my journey began appearing in business magazines and newspapers. From failure to 50 million, the Irene Turner story. The grandmother who built a marketing empire. I was no longer just another failed entrepreneur. I was a success story, an inspiration, a woman who had proven that age was just a number. My phone rang constantly with interview requests, speaking opportunities, and new business proposals. But just as the spotlight was on me, something from my past came back that could threaten everything I had worked for. The speaking invitation came from the National Business Conference, the most prestigious event in the industry. Thousands of entrepreneurs, investors, and business leaders would be there. This was the kind of recognition I had dreamed about for decades. I stood backstage, smoothing my dress and checking my notes one last time. The audience was packed, over 2,000 people waiting to hear my story. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Irene Turner, founder and CEO of Turner Marketing Solutions. The applause was thunderous as I walked onto the stage. The lights were bright, but I could see faces in the crowd. Business suits, notebooks ready, cameras flashing. A year ago, someone very close to me told me I was too old to start over. I began. He said it was over for me. The audience was completely silent, hanging on every word. I'm here to tell you that person was wrong. Age isn't a limitation. Experience is an advantage. And sometimes the people who doubt you the most are the ones who need to see you succeed. The crowd erupted in applause, but as I continued speaking, I noticed a familiar face in the front row. Someone who could threaten everything I had worked for. It was Jack Morrison, my old business partner, who had betrayed me months ago. The one whose wife had convinced him I was unstable. He was sitting in the front row, taking notes, his expression unreadable. After my speech, he approached me backstage. "Irene, that was incredible," he said, but his smile didn't reach his eyes. "I had no idea you had built something so successful." "What do you want, Jack?" "I want to apologize for pulling out of your venture. I made a mistake. But more than that, I want to discuss a partnership opportunity." A partnership. After he had abandoned me when I needed support most, now he wanted to benefit from my success. "I'm listening," I said carefully. "I represent a group of investors who want to buy your company. We're prepared to offer $75 million for full ownership. You'd become very wealthy overnight." $75 million. It was more money than I had ever imagined possible. But it would mean giving up everything I had built, everything that proved my worth. As I looked back on my journey, I realized I had learned something more valuable than money. I didn't need anyone else's approval anymore. But just as I reflected on my achievements, something unexpected happened that made me question if I had truly learned all the lessons I needed to. Before I could respond to Jack's offer, my son appeared backstage. He had been in the audience, watching my speech with tears in his eyes. "Mom, can I talk to you privately?" Jack excused himself, and my son and I found a quiet corner away from the crowd. "I want to join your company," he said suddenly. "Not as your son looking for a handout. As an employee who has to prove himself. I've been taking business courses, learning about marketing and management. I want to earn my place in what you've built." I studied his face, looking for signs of the manipulative behavior that had hurt me so deeply. But all I saw was genuine remorse and determination. "Why?" I asked simply. "Because watching you succeed taught me something about myself. I've been jealous of your dreams my entire life. I sabotaged you because I was afraid you'd accomplish things I never could. But now I want to be part of something meaningful instead of tearing it down." It was the most honest thing he had ever said to me. But after years of betrayal and dismissal, could I really trust him? As I considered his request, I realized something that would change the future of my business forever. "You can start in the marketing department," I told him. "Entry level. Same salary as any other new hire. You'll report to Harold, not to me. And if you can't handle being treated like any other employee, you can quit." His face lit up with relief and gratitude. "Thank you, Mom. I won't let you down." "Don't thank me yet. Harold can be tough on new employees. And everyone in the company knows you're my son. You'll have to work twice as hard to prove you belong there." Over the following months, I watched him struggle with tasks that challenged his assumptions about business and about himself. Harold didn't go easy on him, and neither did the other employees. But slowly, surprisingly, he began to excel. He had inherited some of my determination, buried under years of fear and entitlement. The work seemed to give him purpose he had never found before. Meanwhile, I had decided to reject Jack's buyout offer. $75 million was tempting, but owning my own success was worth more than money. My company continued to grow, reaching new markets and breaking industry records. But the real test came when it was time to plan for the future. When it came time to hand over control, I had a decision to make that could change everything. 2 years later, my son had become one of the most effective managers in the company. He understood the business from the ground up, having worked in every department. Employees respected him not because he was the owner's son, but because he had earned their trust. "I think it's time to discuss succession planning," my lawyer suggested during one of our quarterly meetings. "You've built something incredible, but you need to think about what happens when you're ready to step back." I looked across the conference table at my son, who was reviewing campaign results with Harold. He had changed completely from the arrogant man who had dismissed me as too old. Work had given him humility and purpose. "I'm not ready to retire," I said, "but I am ready to share leadership." I promoted him to vice president of operations, but made it clear that he would have to continue proving himself. The company wasn't a family inheritance. It was a business that had to be earned. "I won't let you down," he promised, just as he had 2 years earlier. But this time I believed him. The company continued to thrive under shared leadership, but I never let him forget the lesson that had started this journey. But as I stepped back from day-to-day operations, I realized that the true legacy I had created was something even more valuable than money. 5 years after that cruel conversation in my kitchen, my son and I stood together at another national business conference. This time, we were both speaking about leadership, resilience, and the power of second chances. "I don't know how you did it, Mom," he said as we waited backstage. "I put every obstacle in your path that I could, and you still built something incredible." "I did it because I had to prove something to myself," I replied. "Your doubt just gave me the motivation I needed." "I'm proud of you," he said, and this time I knew he meant it. "I'm proud to be your son, and I'm proud to work for your company." It was the moment I had been waiting for through all those years of failure and struggle. Not just his apology, but his genuine respect for what I had accomplished. The company was now worth over $100 million. We had offices in 6 cities and over 200 employees. But the numbers weren't what mattered most anymore. What mattered was that I had proven to myself that it's never too late to start over. That failure isn't permanent unless you let it be. That the only person who can truly defeat you is yourself. But as I looked at him, I knew the final lesson had yet to be taught. "There's something I want you to understand," I told my son as we prepared to go on stage together. "I didn't build this company to prove you wrong. I built it to prove myself right." He nodded, but I could tell he didn't fully understand yet. "I spent years letting other people define my worth. Your father, business partners, clients, even you. I measured my success by whether other people believed in me. That was my real failure, not the companies that didn't work out." We walked onto the stage together, the same stage where I had spoken alone 3 years earlier. The audience applauded, but this time I barely heard them. The most important lesson I learned wasn't about business or marketing or money. I continued. It was about believing in myself first. Everything else followed from that. I had spent my life making sacrifices for others, putting their dreams before mine, seeking their approval instead of my own. But in the end, I realized that the most important person I needed to believe in was me. As I looked out at the audience, I saw faces of all ages. Young entrepreneurs with burning ambition. Older professionals wondering if it was too late for them to try something new. People who had been dismissed, overlooked, or told they were finished. I had built something incredible, and I had done it on my terms. And as I looked toward the future, I knew one thing for certain. This was just the beginning.